Hi, I'm Jordan, and this is Whiskey for the People. What we have here today is a Stagg shootout. I've got the 3 most recent Stagg releases that have been distributed to my area, and these are all no juniors. We have the 18, the 22A, and the 22B, and I've pretty much drank them in terms of preference here. You can see I've enjoyed the 18 the most, the 22A the least, and the 22B the second most. But yeah, so what we're going to do here is do a blind of these, see which no junior up to 22B at least is best in my opinion, where my palate lies, and see from there what we get from them. Any notes, anything that's changed, why I like something over another, and let's see if I can guess my preference and match up with what I think I feel on these here. But yeah, so let's go ahead and do that. And it's so tough drinking these. It's like, gosh, I've got to drink Stagg again, you know? It's a rough life. Oh, okay. So on this first glass, I definitely get a little bit of heat. I can tell this is high proof. There's some ethanol there. But I get a little bit of that Buffalo Trace sweet funky note. A little bit fruity. There's not a ton of it right now. But there's this sweet oak that's almost, as of the moment, kind of toasted to me. And I mean that not necessarily like a toasted barrel that's super dark and very caramel, molasses, dark oak profile. But I mean that more like maybe fresh buttered toast type of thing. Just lightly toasted, like a toasted grain, something sweet. Sweet and light and, just slightly baked, slightly, toasted. Let's go ahead and taste this one. Oh yeah. Yeah. That is that's good whiskey. That's really good whiskey. So, from memory, I think I know which one this is. But let's not talk about that. On the palate, very juicy, very full, very mouth coating. That fruity Buffalo Trace profile, that sugary, fruity kind of berry thing going on. Very prevalent on this one. It's kind of at the forefront of it on the palate. And then comes that sweet oak. This glass, this whiskey, seems to have just that sweet. And again, on the nose at least, it comes off as a sweet, toasted grain type of thing. On the palate, I think it just was sweet oak, maybe there's just a teensy bit of that just classic corn sweet note that comes off as maybe a light caramel. But yeah, wow. So fruity. So easy to drink. There's a good amount of ethanol in the nose just because any of these I think are over 130 if I'm not mistaken. I know 18 and 22A are. Let's see 22B here. Yeah, it's right at 130. So all of these are over 130. So there's going to be some of that, especially if you haven't had anything to drink that day, But wow. What a way to start off. This is super solid. Whatever this is, it's great. It's great. And if it's anything that I was a little bit critical of or wasn't as big of a fan of before, it certainly made a believer of me now. So on the second glass, To me, this is darker. This is definitely more oak driven. I'm not sure that let me take a second here. And for those of you who don't know, the reason I'm smelling my my forearm there is when you smell your own skin, especially kind of the forearm, wrist, hand area, that kind of just resets your senses as far as your smell goes. Yeah, so coming back to it, I do get a little bit of that Buffalo Trace sweet, fruity thing going on. Let me take another sip of water here. Whenever I do on these high proofs, it's really helpful to have a lot of water on hand. Yeah, so again, this is more oak driven, more oak dominant than it is that sweet, fruity note that Buffalo Trace is famous for. But it's not offensive at all. This smells very good, but it's a little more oak. So if you're a person that is a person with a palate, if you're a human being and you like drinking whiskey, this is great. You should do it. But no, if you're a person who has a palate that's more into oak, I think this, compared to Glass 1 at least, would be more your jam. If you're not a huge sweet fan, especially if you don't like that fruity stuff, if the only type of sweet you like is kind of those darker, developed, caramelized, whatever, dark oak sweet notes, then this one would definitely be the one of the two that you would like. Let's go ahead and taste it. So I'm surprised by how sweet that is on the palate. I will say, it is not as fruity sweet at the beginning of the palate. It is more confectionery kind of sugar, just very, very, very sugary, bright, creme brulee, which is a little bit darker because it's caramelized. But the pudding of creme brulee, that vanilla custard, it's way more that than it is that darker sweet oak that I was kind of referring to. And it's definitely a lot more just sugar sweetness than is the fruity profile of the first glass. But then on that finish, I get a little bit of that fruit. Whereas the first glass, it came on the palate as very fruity. And then the oak and that kind of sweet toasted, whatever note was going on, that kind of sweet oak note. And then it kind of turned into a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of oak, and then kind of just a classic bourbon caramel, sweet finish. But this one, it finished a little fruity, but on the palate, it wasn't as fruity. And then now coming back to the nose, I guess the fruit's a little more prevalent just because it's what's on my mind. It's what I'm looking for, Let's try just a little swig of this again. Yeah, no, I'm going to stand by my initial impressions. This has got more oak to it. It's got a little bit of a tannic quality to it. Not super bitter, not really bitter at all, to be honest, but tannic. And I don't know how that makes sense, but it does to me. It's a little bit of oak char, but it's not really bitter. It doesn't have a super astringent quality to it. It doesn't have a foul, like overly charred, like licking a barbecue quality to it. Just more dark oak, which oak char, I'm contradicting myself. I hope you can get what I'm trying to convey. It's difficult to convey. Then this, wow, this is a lot more heat. I think I know which one this one is. I think I have an idea of what these are. And ironically, after about 15 times of shuffling these around and playing musical glasses here, I may have done something funny with the lineup. but they are truly blinded. Okay. Yeah, this is just pretty much cinnamon on the nose to me. Definitely. Let's reset the palate here. Reset my nose. Take a swig of water. See what we can get. Okay. Yeah, wow. This is just cinnamon and proof. Just cinnamon and ethanol. There's maybe a slight bit of oak or something to it, but as far as, definitely doesn't have that Buffalo Trace fruit thing going on. I mean, I'm looking for it. Maybe just like peeking out the side, you know, just kind of on the side of that, you see, you smell just maybe kind of the vinegar-esque quality, the funk of the Buffalo Trace sweet, funky profile. Like there's fruit, then there's this kind of thicker, oaky, vinegary, you know, funk, and maybe just a hint of that, but it's all the way to the side of the oak versus the fruity, syrupy, thicky kind of thing over here, whereas the fruit's over here, the syrupy thing's here, the oak's kind of right here. It's like right there on the oak border. It's about to have to show its oak passport, you know what I mean? Okay. Yeah, I think I know which one this one is. Let's go to the palate on this one. Wow, did that throw me for a loop? Okay. Well, I'm out of water. I went through that a little bit too quick. Should have paced myself. Oh, okay. So, I can tell you that does not drink at all like one of these has very distinctively drank before. I can tell you that. So there's definitely something about my palate today, when I first tried one of these, multiple times for that matter. Something's taken place with just a teensy bit of air. I don't know. But one of these drinks significantly different than I recall it from memory. And I was pretty certain of that. And I was pretty certain of which one it was on the nose. And it was this last one. And then now once I've gotten acquainted with the palate of it, the nose is a slight bit different. I get more of that kind of sweet funk. And it is the sweet funk. It's not necessarily the fruity aspect of it that just is the Buffalo Trace profile, in my opinion, or as I perceive it. But there is the sweet funk to it. It's just lacking that kind of fruitiness and that confectionery thing. And Buffalo Trace profile, I'm sure I've articulated this before, but it, you know, whatever, however many videos in, 5 videos in, including this one. Buffalo Trace's profile is this to me in layers and probably sequentially to the palate. It's usually confectionery, fruity, then it goes to this kind of syrupy, sweet, vinegary thing that reminds me of like a super sweet barbecue sauce that isn't really barbecue saucy or vinegary other than the acidity to it, I guess. And then it transitions to kind of sweet oak, and then you get into the other darker sweet flavors, the caramel, the molasses, the toffee, the blah, 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 caramelize this, burnt sugar, blah, 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 right? That's the Buffalo Trace profile in a nutshell to me. And that is prevalent on all of their whiskeys. Across the board, mash bill 1, 2, wheated, rye, whatever. They're, I guess it's the E.H. Taylor rye is a specific mash bill. And I believe it is either significantly rye, almost all rye, or maybe it's malted rye, almost all rye, whatever. It's a specific thing. But nonetheless, I get it across the board on all of those. It's just Buffalo Trace to me. That is definitely on the palate of all of these to some extent, at least an aspect or two of it. And so let's go through these one more time really quick, and I'll place some guesses and we'll do the reveal. Yeah, so this one, gah, gah. All of these are so good. So good. There's not a loser in the bunch, and I thought there was a loser in the bunch, kind of, off first and second impressions. There's not a loser in the bunch. All right, let's try the palate. Take my last drop of water here. Just a dab will do you sometimes. So, this time around, fruit is still there, but there is more oak. There is more lighter sweet oak. And again, that kind of toasted sweetness that I was talking about, or I don't know, toasted rye bread, toasted sourdough bread for that kind of funky, vinegary thing going on. That is just creeping up, creeping up there. It went from third string to second string. It's just right in behind first string there. And yeah, that's good. It's just good. It's great whiskey. It's great classic bourbon. It's cask strength bourbon in its most quintessential form, but with a little bit of that Buffalo Trace profile, the fruit, the funk, the whatever, that makes them so uniquely Buffalo Trace, in my opinion. And I guess I should guess as I go, but I really need this second round because these are throwing me for a bit of a loop. This is probably one of the harder blinds I've done in a good while. And if I lose video, I'll cut back to me, but we're going to let this thing run, see if it'll catch it all in one take. So glass 2 has drank pretty true to my initial impression with it. Oakier than glass 1, both on the nose and the palate. And it has that, again, just slightly tannic quality. And I wouldn't call it bitter, and I don't care if that's contradicting or self-defeating. It's just got that barrel char in the most, just right, that inner layer, just what the whiskey kisses. It's just that little slab. This just maybe a teensy bit sweet, or doesn't have the astringency of that char that's kind of deep down in it or whatever. Yeah, it's just good. It's integrated. It's not offensive, but it's definitely more oak in this one. Man, 2 and 3. Well, 3 is what's thrown me for a loop. 2 is fine. 2 drinks as I predicted to drink, I guess. 3 really surprised me from the nose to the palate, and now coming back to it again on the nose has changed on me. And all of these, and I say this all the time, but you can pretty much assume that I've let these whiskeys rest for 15 to 20 minutes. I do that with everything. I may take an initial sip just to acclimate my palate, but I always let the overwhelming majority of the pour rest for 15 to 20 minutes. And sometimes some whiskeys call for a lot more than that. But I really like to give them a chance to get where they're going. Yeah, this is the one that's throwing me for a loop. If there's a wrench in the gears, this is it. It's the finish and the warmth of this one that reminds me of a particular one, but the nose and the palate of this one are different than I recall what the finish reminds me of. So I'm conflicted as to where my guess is, but I think the finish is too distinctive for me to ignore for my guess here. Just going to nose all these really quick. Yeah. Yeah, I think I've got my guesses. Let me take the last little sip of all these. 3 is throwing me for a loop because now that I'm coming back to 2, 3 is making 2 feel different to me. Man, is that tough. It's the finish on 3 that makes me want to call it what I think it is. I'm just going to have to go with my gut on it. Ironically, I think glass 1 is 18. Glass 2 is... No. It's not. I don't know why. In my head, the order was sequential with the releases. But it's sequential with the releases as they came to me, at least. I think glass 3 is 22A. So 18 distributed in my area first, then 22B, then 22A. And so I think glass 1 is 18. I think glass 3 is 22A. Glass 2 is 22B. So 1, 18, 2, 22B, 3, 22A. Let's see the reveal here. And 1 is 2. Wow. Okay, so the camera cut on me here. We're back. Wow. So number 1 is 22A. And if you would have asked me from the way these drank, which one was 22A, I obviously guess glass 3, but in terms of profile and contrast, as far as being fruit forward, yada, yada, whatever, it almost makes me wonder. I mean, my ego is just telling me like, oh, you must have had a mistake on writing it down or pouring it. What? And then now when I smell it, it smells exactly as I remember 22A. Just super cinnamon and goodness gracious. Wow. Yeah. I mean, coming off that 5-bottle blind, I guess I came in this a little cocky, huh? Right? Wow. Okay. Yeah. So glass 1 is 22A. You would have absolutely fooled me. I thought it was 18. Glass 3, which is 18. And so I didn't get a single one right. That would mean that this is 22. No, I did. Wait. I'm struggling here. It's not the alcohol. It's just my confusion. I got to find a better system. It's hard because you can either do it numerically or you can do it alphabetically, but then alphabetically and then referring to the glasses, and then you get numerical and chronological with the way you think. It just all gets jumbled up. Okay, so at least I got 22B right. Thank goodness for that. Man, no one likes to totally strike out here. It's 22A and 18 that got mixed up. And now coming back to the noses, these are very clear. I mean, did I just fumble the placement of these with my hands? Did I really guess this? Because, I mean, these are on the nose now. Stark contrast. This one's clearly fruitier, 3, 18. This one's clearly, I mean, just cinnamon oak. And that's 22A. I don't know about this. I may have just fumbled in all the confusion, or that may be my ego telling me that. Wow. Well, whatever it is, I can tell you this, that none of these are bad. None of these are bad. And the 22A, now that we're telling all of our secrets here, the 22A is the one that really surprised me. It kind of caught me off guard. I've never had a Stagg Junior, whatever have you, anything that has Stagg on it, bottle that did not impress me upon fresh crack. I mean, really, this 18 on fresh crack, oh my goodness, this was great. I mean, it reminded me why I like Buffalo Trace in general so much, let alone Stagg. And that was coming off of everybody saying, oh yeah, the Junior's better. They dropped the Junior and now it's not the same. All that jazz that everybody always says every time there's a change. But man, 22B was good. But coming off of 18, I was like, this is a little bit oakier. And ironically, before I'd cracked 18 or 22B, which were distributed fairly close together, before I'd cracked either of them, the initial impression or consensus that I got from people with 18 was, oh, there's more oak on this than the standard Stagg Junior profile. Stagg Junior profile is usually sweeter and it has, its own thing. It definitely has cinnamon, but it's usually a little bit sweeter. This has a little more oak to it. When I cracked 18, actually, I tried it at a bar first. I found it at a bar, and then I stumbled into a bottle or two, so to speak. And with 18, I was surprised. It was remarkably fruity to me, even for Stagg Junior profiles. So kind of didn't know what to make of that. And that was at the bar. Then I cracked my own, and it was absolutely, as I recalled it at the bar. I mean, it was deja vu with that bar pour. And then I cracked 22B because, again, that was what was distributed next in my area. And with 22B, I definitely remember it being more oaky even upon fresh crack or whatever when I first opened it, and from memory. But then after I had a pour or two of this or a little swig or two of this, I compared it to 18, and the fill levels were pretty similar after I'd had a couple little small little baby pours of each. And yeah, I remember 22 being distinctively a teensy bit less sweet. And I don't know whether it was, I don't know what it was with the oak, but it was definitely different than what I had gotten from the reviews, because I remember the oak on the reviews being quite heavy, but it was kind of weird. It's just the profile was different. Then with 22A, I just remember it being hot and cinnamony, and my camera's flashing red, so the battery may die any moment. But yeah, super surprising. This was hot, kind of cinnamony, and really kind of dry, not a lot of sweetness, not a lot of fruit to it. And I was just a little bit disappointed. It's the only Stagg Junior or Stagg product or Stagg anything, George T. Stagg, that I've cracked that I was less than impressed with, given my previous experiences and the standard that I'd kind of grown to expect from Stagg products and Buffalo Trace in general. But wow, all these drank great. I don't know whether I fat thumbed the order here. I'm going to go ahead and say I didn't, and just crush my ego and say that 18 and 22A, who I would consider the polar opposites out of the three, which we're talking just nuances here. Yeah. Wow. Humbled by that. But just goes to show you, none of these are bad. All of these bottles are good. If you can find these at the $59.99 that I paid for each one of these, grab them. They're definitely worth it. It's a benchmark. It's a gold standard in the industry and in whiskey in general. And I love these products and will continue to buy them every time I see them at retail. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers.